Chapter 1 of the book, Fear. Some say that there are two instinctive reactions to a crisis, flight or fight. My experience teaches me otherwise. There is only one true instinctual reaction to a crisis, fear. And when we fear, we freeze. It is the most natural and logical of responses in that it provides our mind with potentially vital time to understand what is occurring around us. Over time, we can train ourselves, or be trained, to fight or to flee in a crisis. Firefighters are trained to run into burning buildings, while those who have suffered through a prior fire will typically run from it. But most of us will just stare. We stare with horrified expressions and watch the building burn to ashes. It is March 10th, 1985. The digital clock in room C2D1 reads 3:31, but I am not there to see it. I am lying face down, stark naked, shivering wet, and bleeding on the floor of a bathroom some 30 feet away. My eyes are open, wide, but they are not focusing. A numbing cold is creeping through my 19-year-old body, a body that has been honed by preparing for and racing in 9 26.2-mile marathons. But the source of the icy cold is not the square tile-covered floor that presses uncomfortably up against my face, my chest, and my thighs. Rather, the sensation is spreading from an area near the center of my back, an area where the wounds are, the scratches, and the blood. My toes are cramped from the pressure being pressed unnaturally upwards by the floor since I fell, but I am too exhausted to shift my feet in order to relieve the pain. My breathing remains steady in spite of my growing fear, possibly because my body is shutting down. My mouth is open slightly, just as it was at that precise moment when I looked into the mirror above the sink and first saw the 3 quote-unquote impossible scratches. I am beginning to panic. My thoughts race frantically from synapse to synapse, trying to make a connection that will make sense, which will help me through this, whatever this actually is. But a manic negativity has now seized control. Why did I choose to come here to Geneseo anyway? Death is here. Less than an hour ago, I was running at a brisk 6-minute mile clip along the dirt roads that separate the local farming fields. The azure sky was lined with wispy clouds of white who were being hurried along by an unseen wind current. It was so peaceful. After a month had passed since I was last able to stretch out my runner's legs like this, almost a month had passed since I was last able to stretch out my runner's legs like this. But things were different now. The priest, Father Charlie Manning, had done his blessing, and the thing, that horrid thing, was gone. In the 3½ days since he had raised up his cross, whispered his sacred prayers, and cleansed my college dorm room, my life had returned to a healthy normalcy. Approximately 3.5 miles out, I turned left onto Route 20A and headed back east, over a metal-railed bridge and up the rolling hills to the college. The air inside the dorm was noticeably stale as I climbed my way up the stairs to the second floor, but better that than the sense of dread that had emanated here only 72 short hours ago. Order had been restored. I untied my left shoe when I reached my door and slid the room key off the lace. Normally, my roommate Paul would be inside sitting at his desk, his head bobbing back and forth as he listened to the local rock station, wearing his thick padded headphones. But things had turned ugly in room C2D1, and Paul was now determined to spend most of his free time at home with his parents. I could not blame him. It would likely have been my course of action as well if I had lived less than an hour away like he did. As it was not the case, I often became the lone human occupant, and I soon got into the habit of tying my room key onto my shoelaces so that I could lock my door when I went out. It was very important that the door remain locked. I pulled off my royal blue and white wool cap and tossed it onto the old couch that sat quietly in front of the room's lone window. My hair, which was so famously thick that my Aunt Ro once joked that she broke her thinning shears while trying to cut it, was matted down and a bit darker than its usual shade of sandy blonde due to perspiration. Peeling off my layers of sweat-laced running clothes, I placed them in the plastic bucket at the bottom of my closet and retrieved a white towel, some shampoo, and a bar of soap. The D-quad bathroom was directly across from my bedroom, and a heavy 2-inch thick wooden door on a floor-based roll track guarded the bathroom entrance. It would rattle as it was slid open and closed, due perhaps to its sheer weight, which made passing in and out of the bathroom without notice impossible. This was a fact that would soon become vitally important. Entering the bathroom, I switched on the overhead lights and proceeded to the lone shower stall. A cheap, thin, largely ineffective plastic shower curtain hung from a shiny metallic crossbar. The speckled shower stall floor was lean, cool, and dry. It had not been used for several hours. The warming spray of shower water relaxed my muscles as it washed away the salt from my pores. I lathered up my hair, still taking the time to make the pointy alfalfa little rascal shape that my mother used to when I was young. There was no question that my afternoon training run had gone very well, and if my body continued to respond in such a manner, I would be returning home in just 8 short weeks to what would be a very successful road racing season. My peripheral vision caught sight of a minor fluctuation in the light that was entering the shower stall. The shower curtain certainly was no help, and it probably cost 50 cents to replace. If anyone chose to shoot a glance into the shower stall, they would be able to see at least 2/3 of the occupant at any given time. And it would happen from time to time, especially on Parents' Weekend, when someone's mother or sister would wander onto the wrong floor and be confronted with sights unexpected. This external movement didn't tear me from my thoughts right away, as the 1985 Montgomery Summer Track Series was a prime focus. I wasn't a great hot weather runner, perhaps due in part to my light complexion. Conventional wisdom stated that the darker one's skin, the better able one was to run in hot temperatures. Think Kenya or Brazil. And the lighter one's skin, the faster you were in cooler conditions. Think Norway or Great Britain. But I had held my own the previous year, winning 3 of the 5 scorching hot cross-country runs. The races were long enough to allow me the chance to outstrength my opponents, but not so long, typically 3 to 5 miles, that I would bake in the sun's rays. Reflecting as I was, it occurred to me that it had not rained once during any of last year's races, and I couldn't recall one run under even cloudy conditions. How welcome some shade would have been, even if just for one race. Heck, I would have settled for the shade I had right now. Right now? A sense of uneasiness grew over me. I glanced up toward the ceiling, and there, through the steady stream of water, I saw a human-shaped shadow. It was silently gazing down at me, my eyes squinted, watching as it swayed ever so slightly. Shoulders, skull, a tilted neck. Impossible. The priest had arrived, as he had promised, on Wednesday the 6th at 8 p.m., dark briefcase in hand. I had been there as he chased away the evil with his blessed water and his commending presence. Afterwards he spoke to me about the mysteries of God, and I had asked him if the ghost could somehow come back. Only if you invite him back, he had answered without hesitation. That's not going to happen, I assured him. For as the cleric put away his belongings, I could state with an honest heart that there was no possible scenario in which I could imagine me doing so. Call me if you need anything else, he said as he walked out the door. But there was no need to call. The strange closed-room breezes, the flashing clocks, the whispering voice that people heard calling my name, the empty creaking loft, the missing items, the cloudy white mists, the shadows washing across the walls, the cold fingertips touching my neck, the opening wall-latched closet door, the zones of cold that people claimed to cling to their legs, the tug-of-war with an unseen opponent for my pillow, the self-activating tape recorder, the full-bodied apparition that would rise from Paul's stereo or hover over me as I slept, breathing in my breath, were all gone now. Using both hands, I cleared the water from my eyes, only to see the shadow moving away across the ceiling. With the speed and reflexes that had recently helped me run a 2-minute 9-second half mile, I sprinted from the misty shower stall and came to a sliding, barefooted halt in the center of the college dorm bathroom. Hello? Nothing. Ignoring my nakedness and the immediate discomfort caused by the rapid change in air temperatures, I checked inside the toilet stall and under the sinks. My slightly pruned fingers clenched and unclenched nervously as pools of water began to form around my feet as it dripped down my legs. The pools of water on the floor were good, I reasoned, for if in fact someone had actually mastered the art of opening the bathroom door in silence, I would certainly hear them splash through the newly formed puddles if they decided to foolishly return. It wasn't the ghost. The priest had sent him away. Returning to the comforting warmth of the shower, I began washing the lathered shampoo from my hair, rationalizing that perhaps the shadow was nothing more than an after-image caused from inadvertently rubbing my eyes with my hands. I watched as the steady stream of white shampoo bubbles gathered around my ankles as they prepared to make their unavoidable journey down the shower drain into darkness never to be seen again. The water running down my torso soon became clear again when I noticed the skin on my right arm abruptly darken from a stark absence of light. I shot a quick glance up to the ceiling. The shadow was back. Now, suspended directly over me, the shadow seemed to move a bit closer, as though it were trying to get a better look. I darted a second time out into the middle of the bathroom, nearly losing my footing in the puddles that I myself had left behind just minutes earlier. As I skidded across the room, certain that this time I would see one of my college mates silently cowering in the toilet stall, after having failed to prank me, I said aloud, "There is no way you're getting away. I can outrun all of you. It's done. It's over." Empty. The bathroom was empty. I checked the heavy wood bathroom door. It had not been moved. At this point, I recognized something of great relevance. The room's lights were on the ceiling. This meant that any shadow cast by them would be located on the ground, just as the sun's light cast shadows to the ground during the daylight. There could be no shadows on the ceiling unless there was an active and continual light source on the floor. The pulse in my neck quickened with the sudden understanding that regardless of my efforts, I would never catch one of my friends by chasing shadows on the ceiling. This was because they would be incapable of casting such a shadow. But if it wasn't a person, then... No, I am not ready to accept this. Everything has been fine for 3½ days. Remember, Chris? The priest blessed the room. I looked up at the now shadow-free ceiling and blurted out, "The hell with you." I trudged back as defiantly as one can be while wearing no clothes into the warming shower to rinse off one final time. I turned the water off with my right hand. My left hand had remained free, but it didn't matter. There was no time to react. No warning. My eyes instinctively closed as my face hit the hard shower wall. The wall tasted gross, like soap powder, but I was thankful that my top teeth were not hurt from the swift and sudden impact. And whatever had just been used to stab me in the back, just below my neck, was used with such force that my right foot was momentarily lifted off the ground. I thought I would scream out, but didn't. There seemed to be some strong, countervailing, perhaps primal knowing that released an adrenaline surge that now rushed through me, and I knew the next actions I take might very well be my last. But I wasn't a fighter by nature. I once had a conversation with my friends in the cafeteria during my senior year of high school in which we were challenging each other to label ourselves either as a lover or a fighter. It was a typically meaningless discussion, primarily meant to help us push our way through the awful spongy meatball sandwiches. The conversation had been no doubt brought on by a popular song called "The Girl Is Mine," sung by Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney, that was getting huge amounts of airtime. Most of my friends, who it should be pointed out were too slow for track, too short for basketball, and too weak for baseball, claimed to be fighters. My guess was the only thing that they would be fighting anytime soon would be a bad case of indigestion from the sandwiches, but I liked them. They were creative and funny and were willing to put up with the fact that as a competitive athlete, I didn't have much time to socialize after school or on weekends. For my part, I claimed to be a lover, not that I could prove it, But I certainly wasn't a fighter, I told them, which surprised them given the long-surviving fourth-grade rumor that I knew karate. My claim would bear itself out in dramatic fashion just a few months later. The 3.1-mile road race in historic Cornwall, New York was one that I had been looking forward to for some time. When I had stepped out of the family car in the nearby Bank of New York parking lot a half hour earlier, I told my father that I felt good and that I was primed to contend for the victory. Greg Lamoth, a pleasant and bespectacled gentleman, welcomed us as we registered. A marathoner himself, it was his first year as the race's chair and director, and his efforts were being supported by the Newburgh YMCA Roadrunners. As the start time drew near, I made my way up to the front of the 100-plus assembled runners, as is the established custom in the running community for those who are considered to have a realistic chance of winning. Maybe it was my matching name brand navy blue racing outfit, which were a gift, or perhaps it was my supposed haughtiness at having dared to proceed up to the front as the starter's pistol was about to be fired. Or maybe the guy was just an ass. As the race director made his last announcements through a tinny-sounding blowhorn, I felt a finger jab into my right shoulder. I turned with a smile on my face and extended my right hand, expecting to see someone who wanted to shake my hand and wish me good luck. It was not an uncommon occurrence for me to win my age group category, 16 to 19 on that day, if not the entire race, and we De Cesares were pretty well known for racing several times in any given week. I recall one week in the summer of 1984 when we raced 5 times in 7 days. There usually wasn't a race in which Vito and his kids didn't bring home some type of victory hardware. But the face that greeted me was not smiling. His large square teeth were clenched under a thin black mustache, and he shot me a squint-eyed glare. Very confused, I pulled my hand back and I refocused my attention to the race as the pistol fired. It was a glorious mid-April morning. Newly opened light green leaves on the maple and oak trees that lined the streets, and the fresh smell of the first cut grass of the season wafted from the suburban environment and made me feel very much alive. I would try to win today, the whole thing. The lead pack consisted of 3 runners, only one of whom I recognized. I followed approximately 5 yards back with a secondary pack that included a local well-known runner named Jeff Murphy. If you have even the most basic knowledge of distance running, then you know that the most important aspect of success is properly pacing yourself. The most common mistake new runners make is going out or starting off too quickly. But I knew better. My father had trained me to run successfully from the tender age of 11. From that first day when he chased me for 3 miles with a stick to get me out of my room, it's all right. I ran 18 minutes 11 seconds that day, the high school varsity time. He seemed to know what I was physically capable of. My dad was a genius. Sorry, I just noticed a typo both the omitted a word. I'm just fixing it. I typically preferred holding back and watching the leaders during the early sections of a race. Then, as the miles passed by, I would watch carefully as the perspiration seeped through their shirts, as their legs began to tire and their turnover slowed. I noticed with the practiced accuracy when their arms began to drop at the elbow and when their form broke. I listened to their breathing as it became a more labored and painful effort, and when they began to slow, I would surge past them. Strategy. I took no water from the makeshift stand at the 2-mile mark, which was being successfully maintained by 2 young girls. They were clearly dedicated to the task asked of them, as they had spaced out each cup equally. Rather, I picked up my pace around a corner and begun my move and began my move towards the lead pack. Corners are important. Jeff Murphy chose to go with me, running just a few feet off my right shoulder. It was a decision that buoyed my spirits because he was a veteran runner who knew how to win. Together we moved into third place, picking off a tall, bony-thin runner in a red singlet who looked to be about my age. A track runner with good leg speed who was not used to the distance, I silently counseled myself. His determined facial expression indicated that he wanted to keep pace with us, but his body had no effective response to the surge that had moved us well in front of him. A short-haired gray terrier that must have gotten off of its leash briefly caught my attention. I watched as it sniffed around the base of a nearby mailbox when violence inexplicably came from behind me. I didn't feel the pain from the elbow that jabbed my neck at first, but it did succeed in staggering me to a grinding halt. My hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath, I watched as the angry, poorly mustached runner, the one who had jabbed my shoulder at the starting line, made unmistakable eye contact with me. He had struck me down, and he clearly wanted me to know. In spite of the throbbing pain that stopped just below my jawline, I ran after him. Still, I was afraid. I'm a lover, not a fighter. Jeff Murphy, who had seen the spineless move, was having none of it. He was no taller than me, but now in his mid-20s he had filled out the way a man should. He was street-strong. His curly beard presented my mind with the image of Greek demigod Hercules, who he seemed an awful lot like as he deftly swiped the legs out from under the runner who had just attacked me. Thud. Jeff Murphy kept running, never once looking back at his deserving victim. I started running again, trying my best to work through the lingering pain and to regain a steady stride in spite of a newfound stiffness. The guy with the poor mustache kept running as well, but he stayed back now, keeping his distance. Looking shamed and with no bounce in his step, he crossed the finish line a good 2 minutes after Jeff and me and hastily departed the race area. It was perhaps his first smart move of the day. After the awards had been handed out, I thanked Jeff. He seemed completely unfazed by the whole ordeal as he added, "This kind of crap happens all the time." He was a fighter. Now I had to be. I had just been attacked in the shower, and I had decided that I was going to break someone's nose, even if it meant breaking my own hand, which it probably would, to do so. I tried to remember to protect my face. I wanted to make sure that if I was killed, that there would be an open casket, having read somewhere that it was better for emotional closure. My mom would prefer that, I reasoned. I drew in a deep breath with my runner's lungs, and with every ounce of strength I could summon, unleashed a powerful left-handed haymaker into the area that I estimated my assailant's head might be. I had the passing thought to pull the weapon out of my back in order to use it against my attacker, but I was uncertain about the potential blood loss in doing so. My brain tingled with exhilaration as my fists mercifully came into contact with something tangible. I made sure to follow through with my motion. There could be no letting up. This was a very important moment. There was a tearing sound which was followed by an odd, soft flutter. I had vanquished my foe. The thin shower curtain lay at my trembling feet, utterly defeated. Damn. The only audible sensation was the soft tap of water dripping from the shower head directly behind me. No shoes, sneakers, or feet were visible in the toilet stall on the other side of the brightly lit room, the only possible hiding place. The bathroom was empty. Or was it? Kicking the wet plastic curtain aside, I stepped into the center of the room once again. Without question, the area seemed even colder now. "Who are you?" I screamed, looking about frantically as I did so. "What are you, God, the devil? Show yourself, you coward!" Total silence now reigned. Even the repetitive drip of the water from the shower head had stopped. At that precise moment, the sheer lunacy of the situation gave me pause. I half smiled and considered that maybe none of this was actually happening. Maybe there was no shadow, no attacker, and no injury. Perhaps this was all some type of psychological flashback. Was it possible to simply disbelieve everything? It hadn't worked that way when the thing first appeared in my room back on February 12th. But maybe this time it would work. One shouldn't lose faith in a crisis. Slowly I turned my head towards the rectangular-shaped mirrors fastened above the 2 porcelain sinks. The uneasy hope that I might simply be losing my grip on reality, in spite of the pages and pages of notes in Jeff's journal and the photographs that strongly suggested otherwise, was still very much alive inside me. It was an easy way out of this nightmare, the only acceptable course of action that I could see. There is no wound. I am crazy. Damn, damn, damn. There they were, 3 long, uneven scratches. Their edges, cuts in my soft human skin, were beating up with blood, my blood. This was clear proof that something had just viciously attacked me, proof that priest or no priest, something, perhaps dead, was winning. I had now crossed my own personal Rubicon, and like Julius Caesar, who marched into Rome in 49 BC to lead gloriously and die epically, there was no turning back for me either. This is real. My mind races under my skull, which now strangely feels too tight. The spinning in my head, the turning is too fast right now. Vertigo sets in. I had read about vertigo once. Unfortunately, it turns out that understanding what something is doesn't always help in dealing with it when it actually occurs. I look one more time at my reflection inside the mirror. It looks so sad. I feel bad for myself as I weakly drop to my knees and then fall down onto my face. It is March 10th, 1985. The digital clock in room C2D1 reads 3:31, but I am not there to see it. I am lying face down, stark naked, shivering wet and bleeding, on the floor of a bathroom some 30 feet away. I'm too busy dying.